Alright guys, so I want to make this video as brief as I possibly can and hopefully not confuse everybody in the process. But there's a ton of new gun owners right now, just with all the craziness that's going on in the world. A lot of people are choosing to buy their very first gun. And if you're new to the channel, we've done a lot of ammo testing on here over the last couple years, and I thought I would make a video and maybe try to help some of you new gun owners in selecting what ammo to use in your new gun. So today we're going to focus mostly on pistols. If you want me to do shotguns and rifles and stuff like that, just let me know in the comments below and I can make videos on those as well. But it would be an hour-long video if I were to go over pistols, shotguns, rifles, and all the different calibers and stuff like that. So we're going to focus on pistols, and more specifically, mostly 9mm. But all of these rules that I apply to the 9mm will apply to any handgun caliber really that you get. So 40, 45, 380. 380 is a little different because it's a weaker round, and maybe I'll get into that later. But for the most part, all these rules are general rules that apply to all the handgun calibers out there. So there might be a lot of cuts in this video just because, like I said, I want to speed it up, so I apologize if it's kind of choppy. But if you don't care about all these specifics I'm going to get into and you just wanted a short answer, the ammo that I would tell you to buy most of the time is the Federal Premium HST. I like the 124 grain and 9mm. They all work pretty much exactly how they're supposed to. I don't think I've ever had an HST round in any caliber fail. They always work. They're just a really reliable hollow point. So there's a short answer. One thing I want to say is I get comments all the time from people saying that they use ball ammo for self-defense. It's apparently a lot more common than I thought it was. I've done a couple videos explaining why, I wouldn't use it, and it never fails. I get a ton of comments from people saying that the military uses it, which is a whole other argument, and that they use it and it works really well, and they cite examples of, ball ammo that people have used that's worked and a bunch of other stuff. But I wouldn't recommend it just because I would always want to, diminish my chances of having a round over penetrate and hit something you don't intend to. Obviously, self-defense ammo can over penetrate too. A lot of the time it probably will, but it does lower your chances. And when it does over penetrate, hopefully it's dumped most of its energy in the bad guy and it's not as lethal as it would be if it were a full metal jacket ball round that's still going, 800 feet per second or whatever after it's passed through two people. So now that that's out of the way, I have pretty much every kind of ammo, every bullet weight, every velocity, every caliber out here that you could imagine. And like I said, I don't want this to be too confusing, but one of the most important things when you're shopping for self-defense ammo, especially in a handgun, is the weight of the bullet. So bullet weights are measured in grains. So if you look at, like for instance, this is a Federal Premium HST box, and right here on the side where it says 9mm Luger, underneath it says 150 grain HST. For a 9mm, that's actually a heavy bullet. We also have the 124 grain HST right here. But if you were to look at these boxes side by side and you were, a beginner, you wouldn't notice a difference. A lot of people, when they're starting out, don't even understand what the bullet weights mean, what the differences are, or how this even affects the way the bullet performs. So, generally speaking, the rule is lighter weight bullets go faster, expand more, and penetrate less. There's obviously exceptions to that rule, but that is, generally speaking, what happens. I've always liked to stay kind of in the middle of the road. With 9mm, you have 115 grain, 124 grain, and 147 grain. Those are your three most popular bullet weights. There's obviously, heavier. This is 150 grain HST right here. This is the micro, and these are, obviously heavier than 147, but those are the most common three that you'll see: 115, 124, and 147. I like 124 just because I feel like it's the best compromise. I don't like rounds that penetrate, super deep, just because it's just a mental thing. I know a lot of people prefer that. I get comments all the time from people saying that they love the heavier bullets and they like that extra penetration. Personally, I like 124. It's just what I've always felt the most comfortable with, and it's what I usually use. But just keep that in mind when you're shopping for a hollow point. If you want more expansion and less penetration, go lighter weight bullets, and usually that's how they'll work. So another self-defense round that I would recommend is the Spear Gold Dot. These are hollow points as well, and this is actually a 357 Sig Gold Dot. I have 9mm out here too. I have a bunch of calibers of these, but these work really well. I like the HST just a little bit better in the clothing tests that I've done and stuff like that. The HSTs do seem to perform a little bit better, but Gold Dots work great. Both of these you'll find pretty much anywhere, and you can't go wrong with the HST or the Gold Dot. They work great. Another thing that's kind of important when you're choosing what weight bullet you're gonna go with is the size of the gun you're using. So the full-size guns, like Glock 17s, you know, the big full-size, duty-size pistols with the longer barrels can usually shoot just about anything, and they work really well. But if you're carrying something smaller like a Glock 43, or actually I have the Smith & Wesson Shield on me right now. This is the 45 ACP, but you can see it is a small subcompact pistol. And the subcompact guns especially prefer a heavier bullet. So this 150 grain HST is actually called the Hst Micro. And that's because it's made for a smaller gun, because these heavier bullets handle, you know, the lower velocity that you're gonna get with a shorter barrel. That applies to guns across the board. Shorter barrels usually will give you less velocity, and with less velocity, a heavier bullet will give you the penetration and the performance that you want. So if you're carrying something really small, Glock 43, Smith & Wesson Shield, Sig, P365, something like that, the heavier bullets will be what most people are gonna prefer. I still have got good results with the 124 grains, like the HST, the gold dots and stuff like that. They still work really well out of the small guns, so I just stick with 124 across the board for 9mm, but you definitely get more penetration with these heavier bullets. So hopefully you're still with me and I haven't confused you too much. Another really popular self-defense round that you're gonna see at pretty much every gun shop is the Hornady Critical Duty. Now this is the 124 grain plus P, which we'll get to here in a minute. But the 135 grain that I have right here is an example of a bullet weight that I didn't mention earlier with the 115, 124, and 147. These are 135 grain, which is right in the middle of, you know, the 124 and the 147. And these are a duty round, obviously, by the name. And they have kind of a cool design that's different than most hollow points. I really hope you guys can see that. But there's a little red flex tip, they call it, on the end of that bullet, and if you compare that to like a regular hollow point, which is just wide open, you can see, maybe, hopefully, that cavity in the front of that hollow point bullet, and the flex tip and the Critical Duty is kind of like a plug in that hollow point to allow it to go through barriers without clogging up. So hollow points are vulnerable to being clogged when you're shooting them through clothing, barriers, and stuff like that. And a lot of these duty rounds do help prevent that, and no matter what you shoot these through, they do perform more consistently than a hollow point when you introduce clothes and barriers and stuff like that. So I like the Critical Duties a lot. They do penetrate on the long end. They definitely get a lot of penetration. Not too much penetration, but they do penetrate pretty far. A lot of people love that about them. They're also designed to, you know, go through harder barriers because they are a duty round, and I've shot car doors and everything with these, and they really work well. So that's another option. Now, I mentioned plus P. I'm really trying not to confuse you guys because, again, this video is meant for beginners, but I think this is important to mention. So again, this is the 124 grain plus P Hornady Critical Duty, and this is something you'll see a lot at any ammo shop when you're looking to buy, especially handgun ammo. Plus P is really common. So basically what it means is there's just more power, more velocity, and more energy, which you would think would be a good thing. But I usually stay away from plus P. I actually do not mind the Hornady Critical Duty plus P, but for the most part, I don't want the plus P. They usually have more recoil and they penetrate less, and those are both two things that I don't want. You would think more velocity, more penetration with hollow points and self-defense ammo. That's usually not the case. They hit hard, dump their energy quicker, and stop shorter in tissue and ballistic shell and stuff like that. So it's personal preference. A lot of people don't mind it. A lot of people, you know, probably love it. I don't really care for it. I just don't want the extra recoil and the less penetration. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And I have a ton of ammo out here. Basically, most modern hollow points or self-defense rounds are gonna work just fine, and they're gonna get the job done for you. I have a couple out here that we'll get to in a minute that I wouldn't recommend, but for the most part, it's, you know, 2020. A lot of this self-defense ammo is pretty good. It's all personal preference on what you like and what kind of penetration and expansion and energy and recoil, and there's just a lot that goes into it, but for the most part they all do work really well. So I have a couple out here that I wouldn't recommend for different reasons. So this is the G2 Research RIP. This has been out for a few years now, and for one, it's a gimmick. It doesn't work really well. It's just kind of a marketing thing, and I'll go ahead and take one of these out of the box so you can see them. They look really scary, they look really cool, and they got those little jagged spikes that break off whenever you shoot it into gel or tissue or anything like that. But again, it's all a gimmick. And one thing you have to consider when you're talking about self-defense is you're probably gonna end up in court, or you're at least gonna be looked at after you get into a self-defense shooting. And something that's called the RIP is probably not gonna go over well when people who don't know about guns or ammo are looking at, you know, your shooting situation that happened. So that's another big reason to stay away from these, but really they just don't work very well. Another one that I've tested and I wasn't the biggest fan of is the Sig Sauer 365 V-Crown. Now, I love the 365 pistols, but for some reason their ammo just hasn't given me the best luck. It works okay in bear gel, but once I introduce clothing and barriers and stuff like that, it just fails to expand a lot of the time. I've done a couple videos on it. Again, if you want to find those, they're out there on the channel, but it doesn't expand as well as something like the HST or the gold dots, at least in the videos that I've made. Another really popular one that you'll see everywhere is the Hornady Critical Defense. Now, this is kind of the opposite of the Critical Duty. It does have the same flex tip in it. Go ahead and take it out for you. But you can see, once again, it's got that Hornady flex tip on the end of the bullet there. But the Critical Defense is definitely a lighter weight bullet. I think this is a 115 grain. Yeah, 115 grain. And these penetrate a lot less than the Critical Duty. When I first started making videos on these, I thought that they were kind of a well-respected round. I don't know too many people that like these. I get tons of negative comments on these every time I test them. There's even stories I get from people saying that they know a guy that got shot 15 times in the face with the Hornady Critical Defense and, you know, walked away and shot 5 more people, and just crazy stories about these that I've never heard. I'm not saying they're not true, but it just sounds crazy. But yeah, a lot of people think these are underpowered and they don't like them. They do get the bare minimum penetration that's required by the FBI, which is 12 to 18 inches and 10% ballistic gel. These usually stop right at 12 inches in bare ballistic gel. So keep that in mind. I don't use them. I don't think they're the worst thing you could choose, but I definitely don't use these. One more that I'll go ahead and talk about, since I have it sitting right here, is the Underwood Xtreme Penetrator. This is a 115 grain plus P plus round, which again is even more power than plus P. So these are really cool. They're kind of a cool concept too. You can see that interesting bullet shape. It's got like fins on it, and they do their job. They definitely penetrate like crazy, but as far as self-defense goes, I wouldn't recommend this, just because I think I've shot 2 ballistic gel blocks like in a row, and I could be wrong, but I think this went through 2 20% ballistics gel blocks and out the other side. So that's crazy penetration. Way too much for something that I would recommend to carry, but they are kind of a cool round, and if you were to see something like this, you would probably think it would be a good idea, but I would stay away from it. And that's pretty much it as far as rounds that I wouldn't recommend or that I would say to stay away from. Like I said, for the most part, modern day self-defense ammo all works pretty well, and you don't really need any of these even to get the job done. A lot of these are pretty high priced, you know, they're marketed really well, they're considered premium self-defense ammo, but something like the Remington UMC is a favorite of mine and a lot of people that watch the channel. These are 115 grain. Yeah, but I think they make these in other bullet weights as well, but these work really well, and I mean, you can get a 100-round box of this stuff for really cheap, so it's not anywhere near the price of the HSTs and, you know, the critical duties and stuff like that, but they do work really well. I've done a ton of videos on these as well. This is one that I got to tell you guys about. I'm a humongous fan of these, and you don't see them in stores very much. These were actually sent to me by a viewer, but this is called the Fort Scott Munitions TUI, which stands for Tumble Upon Impact, and this is an 80 grain bullet, which is really light for a 9mm, but it's kind of a different take on self-defense ammo. So like I said, the TUI stands for Tumble Upon Impact, and you can see the shape of that bullet. It just looks like a really pointy ball round, but these do tumble like crazy and create crazy big wound cavities in ballistics gel. Way bigger than most of the hollow points that I've tested. I don't think I've ever had hollow points get the wound cavities that I've got out of these. So these are really impressive. They do penetrate a little bit further than a lot of hollow points do, but again, that's just personal preference, and I definitely like these a lot. I think they're a really cool idea. So I don't have too much more to say. I kind of covered most of the really common stuff. There's obviously, other ammo out there that you're not gonna see in stores. Like these are the Norma Monolithic hollow points, supposed to be one of the biggest expanding bullets in the world. They're huge, they definitely expand like crazy, but again, it's kind of something you don't really need. It's just cool to have and kind of another marketing thing. But I think I did cover most of the really popular, really common self-defense rounds you're gonna see at your, most gun stores. And I don't wanna go too deep into this and confuse everybody, but I did want to kind of give you guys a brief overview of what all those numbers mean, what all the phrases mean, and what the different brands are, and hollow points, and all that different stuff. It's just a lot to take in when you're new. And actually, until I started this channel, I learned a lot from my audience. I didn't know a lot of stuff about bullet weights and heavier bullets penetrating more, and lighter weight bullets, faster bullets actually penetrating less. All that was confusing to me too. So I thought that I would make a video and try to help some of you guys, if you are new, try to understand all of this, and hopefully it helped you a little bit. Practicing with your new gun is going to be a lot more important than whatever ammo you're buying. They're all going to work pretty well. So hopefully I was able to make sense of all of this for you guys. If you are new to the gun community, or the lifestyle I should say, just be safe, practice a bunch, and you'll probably fall in love with it like I did. If you're new to the channel, guys, hit that subscribe button for me. My analytics tell me that over half the views I get are from people who aren't even subscribed. So if you're new to guns, we do a bunch of ammo tests on here. We do experiments, fun videos, pretty much anything gun related we do here on the channel. So hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, hit that like button for me. That really helps me out a lot as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.